heard him before I saw him. So I'm like, man, that's Mac Dre. He'd be around, our crews would be around, you know what I mean? And what really got us together is my Cuddy T Love from my crew.
The truth is, for years, Mac Mall couldn't even speak. Born Jamal Rocker in the fog-laced streets of Vallejo, California, he was silenced by a debilitating stutter that began the moment he first tried to talk. Growing up in the notorious Crest Side neighborhood, surrounded by poverty and violence, the stress of his environment literally stole his voice. But here's the incredible part. That same darkness, that same struggle became the forge that created one of hip-hop's most explosive and authentic voices. So how did a boy who was silenced by trauma transform his greatest weakness into his most formidable weapon? To understand Mac Miles' story, you first have to understand where he came from. Vallejo's country club Crest neighborhood, known simply as the Crest, was a place of stark contradictions in the 1980s and 90s. This wasn't some random poor neighborhood. It was deliberately created by decades of racist housing policies that pushed black families into specific areas after World War II. By 1960, while the east side of Vallejo was 95% white, the Crest was over 91% black. This systemic isolation created a community that was culturally rich but economically starved. But the Crest was also home to something much darker. The notorious Romper Room crew operated out of this neighborhood, running armed bank robberies, large-scale drug trafficking, and worse. This wasn't Hollywood glamorized violence. This was real, daily danger. Even Mac Dre, who had become Mac Miles' mentor, got caught up in federal investigations and ended up behind bars. For young Jamal Rocker, this environment created constant, crushing stress. And that stress manifested in the cruelest way possible. It gave him a severe vocal stutter that trapped his thoughts inside his mind. Imagine being a kid with so much to say, so many thoughts racing through your head, but every time you try to speak, the words get stuck. That was Jamal's childhood. Years of what he would later call pent-up verbal angst. The frustration was unbearable. Kids who stutter often retreat into themselves, developing rich internal worlds because speaking to the outside, one is just too hard. But then, at age 13, something magical happened. He discovered rap. When Jamal Rocker put on the persona of Mac Mall, his stutter vanished. For the first time in his life, speaking was effortless. This wasn't just finding a new hobby. This was a complete therapeutic breakthrough. The rhythm and performance of rap allowed him to access a fluency that had been locked away his entire life. The more he practiced, the less he stuttered in regular conversation too. It was like his brain was literally rewiring itself through art. The mask of Mac Mall became more than a stage name. It was a psychological switch that freed him from the anxiety tied to being Jamal Rocker. And when those years of bottled up words finally found their release, they didn't just flow, they exploded. Mac Mall developed a rapid-fire, aggressive delivery that was completely different from the laid-back style of most West Coast rappers at the time. Every bar came out like he was making up for lost time. Because in a way, he was. He rapped with incredible density and detail because for years, his thoughts had raced far ahead of what he could say out loud. It's amazing how art can literally save a life. Have you ever seen such a powerful example of someone turning their biggest struggle into their greatest strength? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And while you're there, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss more stories like this. By 15 years old, Mac Mall was ready to document his world. On July 13, 1993, he released his debut album, Illegal Business. The title itself, with that question mark, perfectly captured the moral confusion of growing up in the Crest. The album was recorded independently on Kyrie's Young Black Brother Records, and nobody expected what happened next. It sold over 200,000 copies with almost no mainstream support. The sound of Illegal Business was pure mob music. This wasn't the polished, sunny G-Funk coming out of Los Angeles. Producer Kyrie created sprawling, synth-drenched beats that were darker and grittier, matching the cold, foggy reality of Northern California street life. And Mall's lyrics were startling in their maturity. Critics compared the album to Nas's Illmatic for its raw honesty and vivid storytelling. Songs like Young and Die Game went beyond simple street tales to explore the cyclical nature of crime. This was social reportage from a teenager who was actually living it. While most 15-year-olds worried about homework and school dances, Mac Mall was at a genuine crossroads, facing life and death decisions with guns hidden under his bed. The album's power came from its authenticity. This wasn't posturing or playing a character. This was his real life. One of the most powerful moments on the album came from his mentor, Mac Dre, who recorded a guest verse on the track Pimp Shit over a jailhouse telephone. You could hear the crackle of the prison phone line in Dre's voice, raw proof of the world they lived in. This wasn't just a collaboration. It was a symbolic passing of the torch. Mac Dre, from behind bars, was anointing the young Mac Mall as the new voice of the Crest Side. The success of Illegal Business changed everything for Mac Mall. Suddenly, this 16-year-old kid was a local superstar or trying to navigate fame, hood politics, and the temptations of street life all at once. But then something incredible happened. He met Tupac Shakur. Mac Mall was at a video shoot for his cousin E40. When he worked up the courage to approach Tupac, he started introducing himself, saying he was from the Crest Side of Vallejo and had a record out called Illegal Business. Before he could finish, Tupac stopped him. The superstar already knew who he was. "I'm listening to your stuff right now in the car," Tupac told him. Then he made a promise. "I'm going to do something with you one day." Just weeks later, Tupac showed up at the Young Black Brothel Records offices in Vallejo. He chose to direct the music video for a Ghetto Theme, one of Mall's most socially conscious tracks, and he did it all for free. Tupac brought his own film crew, wrote the treatment, and handled the entire production. Years later, reflecting on why Tupac would do so much for him, Mac Mall realized the truth. "I think he saw himself, the younger version. He wanted to do for me what nobody did for him." Tupac's early work was all about social injustice and the struggles of young black men in poverty. In Mac Mall's detailed social commentary and righteous anger, he recognized a kindred spirit. By directing Ghetto Theme, Tupac was telling the world that this young voice from Vallejo mattered, that this wasn't just gangster rap, but important social art. But the most important relationship in Mac Mall's life was always with Mac Dre. Dre was more than a mentor. He was the direct link in a lineage that started with the Mac and continued through Mac Dre to Mac Mall. When Dre went to prison, he made it clear from behind bars, it was Mac Mall's turn to carry the torch and put the Crest on the map. But even the strongest bonds can be tested. Over time, Mac Mall and Mac Dre's relationship fractured. It wasn't really about them, though. It was hood politics. People on the outside, jealous of what the two Macs could accomplish together, worked to separate them. If Mac Mall and Mac Dre were united, their combined influence would be unstoppable. So outsiders played on jealousies and competition using a classic divide and conquer strategy. But years later, something beautiful happened. Mac Mall and Mac Dre repaired their friendship. They came back together to record a full collaborative album called US Open. Mac Mall described the energy as just love, centered on a simple concept. "Me and Mac Dre back together, we're going to pass the mic like tennis." The album's title reflected that back and forth chemistry, their rhymes flowing seamlessly between them. Mac Dre was at a creative peak during this time. The album's sound was more mainstream and professional than his earlier work, and many people believed he was finally on the verge of a national breakthrough. US Open also brought unity to Vallejo hip-hop. The track Dredio featured E40, officially ending a years-long beef between the two Vallejo legends. Everything was coming together. The two Macs had overcome the divisive forces that tried to tear them apart. They were united, making their best music, and the future looked bright. Then tragedy struck. On November 1st, 2004, Mac Dre was murdered in Kansas City. The album they'd largely completed together was released posthumously in March 2005. What should have been a triumphant comeback became a heartbreaking final statement. US Open wasn't just their last album together. It was the ultimate embodiment of Mac Mall's entire story. The constant battle between creation and destruction, unity and division that defined life in the Crest. Mac Mall's journey is one of profound resilience. He took a speech impediment that could have silenced him forever and transformed it into a signature flow that exploded with years of pent-up emotion. He took the brutal reality of his neighborhood and turned it into illegal business, A classic album that captured his world with startling honesty at just 15 years old. And after losing his mentor just as they'd reconciled, he helped turn their shared grief into a final monument that celebrated their brotherhood. His is the story of a voice that, against all odds, refused to be silenced. If you enjoyed this look into a hip-hop legend's journey, hit that like button and subscribe for more. What's your favorite Mac Mall track? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching.